Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode. My name is Menchok Butchak. I'm here to talk about a bit of history about the Lost Boys, the important Lost Boys, what they have done to the current South Sudan, and what they have done to the most of the relations who are residing over in East Africa. If I talk about the East Africa, I mean Kenya and Uganda. And majority of the people living in the most urban towns of those countries, being sponsored and a lot of, relations, getting sponsored and are in high education, some about completed educations. So what I would wanted to do is just a brief scenario on the achievement of the Lost Boys, because it looked like when people in East Africa write their articles, they seem to forget the importance of these people, this group, and what they have contributed to the entire nations of South Sudan. And this is in particular annoying sometimes, when you find some negativity about people talking Lost Boys, they underpin the negativity in their articles, and this is a bit ignorance in most cases. So who are the Lost Boys? When the Lost Boys were the majority of the young people who were between the age of 6 to the 13 years who were taken out of their parents in 1987 to travel to Ethiopia. The aims of Dr. Gerengs and people like Kwame Juk, who were the leads of all these initiatives, were to educate this vast majority and to also reserve some part of this majority as the future leaders. And that was the main objective of them being forced out from their parents and to go to Ethiopia for education in a safe haven, because there was no war in Ethiopia. That was a neighboring ally to South Sudan, the Southern Sudan by then. And too many of them, trek, to Ethiopia. They were so resilient, and many of them die on the way because of anger. There's too many hardship, so there was no any mean of transport. People walk long miles to reach their destinations. So when they reach Ethiopia, the majority of the Lost Boys, did not begin their education until reaching the refugee camps in Ethiopia straight away. And however, the training they received there was minimal. It wasn't intensive as the primary school would be. It was not until they reached, again, when the war broke out in Ethiopia, they have to trek again from Ethiopia and coming toward the direction of Kenya. So many of them died on the way, and of course, yes, most of them became resilient and didn't give up, with the norms of the freedoms, and the country, Sudan was still in war. So they had to trek, to find another safe haven. And the safe haven now is to travel to Kenya. Upon reaching Kenya, this is where their education began again. After 6 years, 6 years later in Kakuma, that they actually began attending classes on a regular basis, because the classes were start being built, in Kakuma as well. But again, in Ethiopia and some part of 1992 and mid 1994. Initially those classes were held outdoors, and as no adequate buildings were available, the boys and the girls gathered under shady trees where they viewed their lessons from small mobiles, chalkboards, while sitting on their hearts in the dust grass. These are realistic facts, Some of these young people who are writing articles today should understand where these boys came from and the girls came from. And some of their teachers were qualified to be instructors, people like Miles and Jamal Laks were the senior leaders in leading these boys and girls. But others were simply elders who did not complete their primary schools when the war broke out in South Sudan, but they were selected within the adult population of the camp. so that they can be able to assist in instructing and mentoring these young people. And all this, were because of the resiliency. That's why they were all given that. A pencil and the papers were supplied by the numerous United Nations agencies in the refugee camps, but were available in limited quantities. Later large and mud buildings were built that served as schools, but they still left much to be desired. So majority of all this, were still not in the standards of what the school would look like, but still they were substantial to the people who are living in that environment to be able to attend the schools. But due to the lack of electricity, there were no air conditioning within the classroom, and the boys were subjected to extremely hot temperatures. And this was the norm of the Kakuma. Kakuma is a hot climatic area. They often have windows built within the mud walls of the school, allowed a steady breeze of red dust, often covering the pathways and the borders and irritating their eyes. It was a norm, you find everyone with red eyes, in Kakuma, and because of the dust and all that. So it's a norm that we went through, we've all gone through, and we know what it was, despite, wherever we are at the moment, who will never, any lost boy or lost boy and lost girls would never, underestimate the condition they underwent. So leave alone, some of the indirectly or directly, beneficiaries of what the lost boys are talking behind the lost boy at the moment. So these beneficiaries, they're indirectly, indirectly benefiting from the lost boys, in somehow in East Africa, but still writing some nasty stuff. So I'm talking about this small history so that they understand where these people came from, So while in the refugee camp in Kakuma, the lost boys and the girls assumed to be orphans adopted a common slogan which said, "An education is my only mother and father." And that's what the reality, and that's what motivated people like us, who are here right now. We have never, some of us never stayed with their mothers, their fathers, because of what had happened in South Sudan. So I will not dwell on that a lot because we all know what we went through. So they knew that an education would speak on their behalf when their parents no longer could, and that's the reality. Most of us right now are pretty educated, and some of us, has education is speaking on their behalf, rather than the parents speaking, in any communal areas. So even if you don't speak yourself out, your education is speak on your behalf, and that's the reality. And that's the East Africans, South Sudanese will need to understand this. These lost boys have gone so far, and the girls have gone so far. So after migrating to United States of America, Australia, and Canada, the lost boys and the girls were more determined than ever to continue their education. They realized that an education will not only allow them to secure their future in America, in Australia, and Canada, but it could also somehow help them one day change the future of their homeland as well. And that's the reality of the fact. You would understand that when the lost boy first migrated to America, in the early 2000s, most of them, and went through under Bush administrations, George W. Bush, and that was the realistics that, the time when there was a need of fees in the whole entire Sudan, Dr. Grant and his Bashir and the Bashir government were on the table negotiating, but there was a resistance toward the fees process, But the lost boys didn't migrate to America, and went and sit back looking for a beautiful life. They went further knowing that they left their motherland behind, and still the majority of their relations, the majority of the people are still struggling in the country. So what they have done, they went ahead to pressure the Bush administration. Some went to the White House to protest. Some lobby around with the senators, in America, to make sure the stability is brought, the peace and stability is brought to South Sudan. And through their push, the Bush administration didn't just keep quiet. The Bush administration pushed to both parties, to go on the negotiating table and make sure that the peace is signed, That Naivasha protocol didn't just come in a silver plate, as some of you in East Africa sometime, would not completely appreciate the Lost Boys and what they have done. This is one good achievement that Lost Boys have brought to South Sudan. Their pressure made push al-Bashir and Garang to sign peace in Naivasha, and to make sure that the South Sudan opted out on that hostility in Sudan to become an independent country. This was always, all along, coming from the Lost Boys and the Gales of Sudan in the United States. So it is a great milestone that any other person would have ever done to their homeland. And that was a brilliant move for them. So they cannot be underestimated by all means. When you write your articles about the Lost Boy, make sure there's a possibility of the good deeds that you are mentioning in your article. Don't just write random articles that subject the Lost Boy to negativity. That is not them. They have done a lot of things. Look here, you will see some Lost Boys going to the United States. Most of them are doing double jobs, triple jobs, while studying. Some sleep for 2 hours. It is the same anywhere in the Western world. Most of these people sleep for 2 hours. The reason being is that they are really caring with a lot of people back home. They have a lot of family members to take care of. They have the entire relation to take care of. They have a lot of friends, who have any child who have migrated to the Western world to take care of. They have done a hell of a sponsorship, and all those sponsorship are through their hard works. No one is helping them in the United States, in Australia, in Canada, to do this. There's no money on the street. You gotta sweat doing any kind of job so that these people in East Africa can be uplifted. These Lost Boys have uplifted thousands and thousands and thousands of South Sudanese. And the majority of the life that is being lived now in Nairobi, in Kampala, in Addis Ababa, in other cities around East Africa, in Cuba. You want to tell me that you have not benefited from the Lost Boy? Hell no. If you haven't benefited from Lost Boy directly, you might have even just indirectly benefited from them. And I'm pretty sure this has happened. You would see a lot of the young people who are graduates at the moment in working in the most senior positions in the government in Cuba, working for the NGOs, working for the states in the federal level. These people have been educated, by the Lost Boy. Majority of them, have been educated by these people who are being, victimized with negativity all the time on social media. They have done so massively, It is a bad time we appreciate ourselves. And it is a bad time the Lost Boys, their good deeds are needed to be heard out in social media, not the negativity. Yes, they might have some social issues because they are trying to work hard so that their countrymen are uplifted. And this is the reality of the fact, So most of these people attend classes, full time, and work, a lot of other times. And that's the reality of the fact,